Namibia needs me and Namibia needs you. Welcome to the podcast that breaks down the stories shaping our nation and puts it right in your hands. We take social, political, and economic factors that are driving change across the nation and break it down for you so that you know what matters and why. No fluff, no filler, just real talk. So let's get right into it.
Expect a breakdown of key events, policy changes, and social dynamics that influence our political landscape.
Morning, Janola. How are you doing?
Blessed and well, Ethne, how are you?
Always. We've got a few stories to talk about this morning.
Yes.
The one that I was quite interested in was the Ministry of Health and Social Services saying we've got too few staff. Do you want to introduce that story to us?
Yes, of course. So the Namibian, right on the 22nd of June, that the Ministry of Health is basically urging private sector doctors to sort of, as a way of, I don't know if it's corporate social responsibility they're expecting from them, or if it is just their way to say, look, there is a challenge. We have a lot of people in our hospitals and so few doctors. So we are calling on private sector doctors to volunteer at specific hours in public hospitals. Yeah, I think that is basically what the story highlights.
Yeah, that's it. It's very short, but what I did find interesting is that we spoke a few weeks ago about really actually how understaffed we are as a country.
Yeah.
We have too few clinics per population, and this is exacerbated by the fact that we're a vast country, so people have to travel very far.
Yeah.
And so now it's coming up again, and it's maybe worth just going back to that and looking at the fact that we have too few nurses. So much so that the ministry is asking private medical officers, and this bit is a little bit funny because they're asking private medical officers to submit an expression of interest for pro bono work. It's like, apply to do work for free. Slightly comical, but also not. It's actually quite tragic, and it's being highlighted by the fact that, especially in Katatura Hospital, the preferred hours at which people are visiting the hospital is in the evening from 7 p.m. until the early hours of the next morning.
Yeah. And I think seeing that, at NNM, we are very strongly focused on encouraging active citizenship. This could be one way
nice,
that
Janola.
A doctor in the community that wants an opportunity to give back can make use of, And this is what we sort of try to promote, is that more and more people participate in democratic processes. And part of this democratic processes is having people to say, you know what, let me give back to the community. And this is how you can now do that as a doctor, or as a nurse, or maybe as an unemployed graduate. And or basically, government is asking for your time. There's an opportunity to do it. And we see it as a way of active citizenship,
And I think that when you take your Hippocratic oath, that's kind of part of it as well. Yes. That medical professionals do get taught that they have that responsibility anyway. Yeah. But they are so overworked, and it really speaks to the need for greater training in the medical profession in our country.
Yeah. And that is the kind of responsibility we try to foster in citizens in general, that people actively participate and take ownership of initiatives like this. Yes, it's not easy. Maybe you're already running a practice and you have all your hours invested in that already. But remember, corporate social responsibility is every organization's duty, it's every citizen's duty. And of course, being it the medical fraternity, it will be a way of saving lives, practically saving lives,
Truly.
Yeah. Understanding these issues helps us to be more engaged in our communities.
The next story I thought was quite interesting was the National Youth Fund. Because
yes, very interesting story.
Okay. Government is saying, listen, we're going to make loans available for entrepreneurs. And this is a way of tackling youth unemployment, which at the moment stands at 44.5%.
Yeah.
Very alarming. And the fund will target apprenticeships and graduate internships. What are your thoughts on that, Janola?
Okay, so for me, two things. I think generally as young people, government can't employ everyone. And the government administrative apparatus shouldn't be looked at as an instrument of employment. But again, entrepreneurship is the second outlet through which young people themselves can, first of all, employ themselves and also have an opportunity to employ other young people. So I think an economy that tries to foster youth entrepreneurship development or initiative that tries to foster that is a great idea. My only fear is that I don't want it to become another MSME bank situation.
Exactly.
Because, well, in terms of the direction they want to take, they want to do some targeted lending, public grants, policy-based options, and maybe market linkage systems, which is sort of also the objectives that MSME Bank had, but it felt flat. And at the moment, the National Youth Fund does not have a designated parastatal directorate through which it will be operated. Maybe they will give it to the National Youth Service, maybe to the National Youth Council, but they are still looking for an organization that will administer the fund in itself.
So tell us, just for those of us who don't know what you were referring to earlier about the fund that did not work.
Okay, so basically the MSME Bank was the brainchild of Dr. Hage Keinkop.
What does MSME stand for?
Small, medium enterprises.
Yes, so there was a loan.
Yeah, so basically it was a parastatal, a bank that was designated to be able to give grants, loans and subsidies to Namibian entrepreneurs. So if you had a great idea, you make a submission, they vet you, they help you with viability in terms of how likely is it to succeed, and then they give you funding in terms of what you will need it for, like is it project-based, is it a long-term business, and things like that. But obviously that very great initiative was not managed properly, and there were situations where money was lent out, there was no proper repayment structure put in place, and of course the bank made a wrong investment and lost millions of taxpayer money, basically. Yeah.
So thank you for that recap. Then the other thing that you were saying is that?
So is that basically youth entrepreneurship efforts should be supported. So again, my second fear was that let it be done, let it be very meticulously done, so that again we don't have another MSME situation. I think that was my second takeaway. And of course, the government is saying that the aim of the NYF is to be able to produce 52,000 jobs in a year, because basically if you support youth entrepreneurs, they will employ other youth. And therefore, as a way, you now have a growing entrepreneurial community, growing entrepreneurship, and therefore the 44.5% unemployment rate will drop even further. So basically, I think the idea is great. So far, government has committed 256 million, but they are saying that more will be committed towards the fund. I think great idea. It's in terms of the execution that I want to see it done more effectively, more meticulously. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Janola. Yeah, I would say that what really excites me about what I'm hearing here is that it's targeted at apprenticeships and graduate internships. I think those are really two kind of lost arts lately, where people go to universities and think they're going to get a job.
Yeah.
But apprenticeships are such an incredible way of building up valuable skills for the marketplace that kind of has lost traction in the last few decades. And I'm really excited about seeing that popping up again. Yeah. Getting young people to follow other people who have skill sets. Plumbers, electricians, people who need work that we really need and that can make a lot of money as well. Yeah. And then internships, that the government's paying companies in the private sector to take on interns. That's such a valuable way, again, of skills transfer.
Yeah,
and getting young people up to a standard where they are employable, because increasingly our graduates aren't very employable. And apprenticeships and internships are such a wonderful way of tackling that. So I love that focus.
Yeah, and the fact that government is willing to fund, because a lot of organizations want the capacity these young people can offer, but they just can't afford to have them around. So government stepping in to assist with that, great idea. Yeah.
And then ever since I read the results on Big, it just keeps popping up into my mind when I read things like this, because you've mentioned, I'd love to see this happening with a little bit better management. And the amount of money and time that goes into the resources required to just manage a fund like that, which Big completely bypasses by saying, listen, we've got the results therein if you just give people cash. Not on any merit. You don't have to decide who gets it or under what scheme or how. Just give everyone cash, and the effect on poverty, the effect on childhood malnutrition, all of those things, school attendance, but the effect on entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
If you just give people cash, they create their own jobs and opportunities. And you don't have to have this costly, resource-heavy body that administers these complex funds that require so much record keeping and all of the rest.
Yeah.
And so I just have to mention that again because the results were so compelling and it's so applicable to this.
I mean, it was piloted and it proved it worked. So why not, you know?
And it's not the first time it's been piloted. It's been piloted in several countries across the world. But it has also been piloted here. So we can't even say, okay, well, it worked in other countries but it won't work here. No, it worked
because
in
we
other
have
countries.
our own example that worked, that can be referenced. Each segment of our podcast will connect headlines to actions that you as a citizen can take to stay engaged, informed, and contribute to your community. All right. Okay. Moving on. Another very interesting story from the Namibian on the 22nd of June. So I know in our last episode we covered police brutality, but in this particular story, the police in the Oshana region are saying that they have poor infrastructure, there's limited resources, and a lack of community cooperation for them to be able to do their job effectively.
I have to say,
before I go into that, please give me your 2 cents on it.
I mean, just again, tragically comical. The police want criminals to attend meetings with them. The police are saying, come on, criminals, why aren't you coming to these meetings with us? We want to help you.
Yeah.
Fair, I understand the intentions, but there's something comical about it as well.
Yeah.
And the police saying, listen, we really want to curb crime, but we can't get the criminals to come into meetings with us.
Yeah.
No, we can't. We can't expect that. Yeah. So the story is that the Oshana Community Police is saying they've got the second highest crime rate at 11 point something %, following the crime rate of the Khomas region, which is the highest. Second highest crime rate, only one car in that region to help community police.
I think, and this is also for the Namibian police to note, it is very, very important for police to build a relationship with the community. The reason people will not, or young people will not attend community engagement, because what Muyambango is saying is that they have community meetings, but people don't come. And even if people do come, there are no young people, only the elders come. And that is because there has no relationship been built in the region between the people and the police. So police should begin to institute initiatives like maybe collective cleaning campaigns, like maybe bazaars, maybe let's end crime protest or whatever. Just innovative ways that they could get young people involved so that they build that relationship first. Because as it stands, also due to the issues of police brutality happening in these communities on the ground, obviously young people will be very reluctant to attend out of fear. So they must first try to build a relationship before they try to have okay, let's just meet the community. No, that won't be. There must be other creative ways through which they can garner the support of young people and draw the young crowd, and then they use those platforms to push their message. But as it stands, there's no relationship, and therefore there is no feedback from young people. And mind you, young people have the most energy. They are most likely the perpetrators of, let's say, crime and things like that. So it is their support that the police need to be able to grow or build safer communities. But they must, of necessity, build that relationship.
A very valuable point. And I mean, it's not only the energy of youth that makes them more likely to be criminals, but really the isolation they face as a group of people who have not been as well cared for in terms of education and have very few prospects in terms of employment. And so they're really stuck in a very difficult place.
Yeah.
I always think of Malcolm Gladwell's, it's an old point at this point, but that idea of the broken window, that police who look after petty crime, who have disciplined themselves in looking after petty crime, in fixing a broken window, in being quite meticulous with traffic or with jaywalking. Those communities often see a drastic decrease in crime rates. So when police focus on keeping your community quite disciplined in terms of small petty crimes, there is a marked improvement. And that is something that police can do. That's a police intervention that has demonstrable, proven track record of decreasing crime.
Yeah.
But I think it's also wrong of us to see crime as a problem that police need to solve. Crime is a problem that police respond to once it has already happened. But to see our police force with the best of intentions as a preventative measure when it comes to crime is perhaps misinformed. It's a social issue. The reasons for crime is not within the hands of police to solve. It's unemployment. It's broken communities. It's poverty. And these aren't problems that is within the means of police to solve.
No, often the police, basically because of their position, they don't have the capacity to deal with the root, so they end up just only dealing with the branches, and the situation could only be getting worse. But I think even more importantly, and that is also what we try to echo when we go around the country, have these community dialogues, university dialogues, is that even just community safety is a collective responsibility. Police cannot do it on their own, of course, but we as the people within the community, we are the primary custodians of our safety. And then should it then not be beyond us, that is when we can involve the police, support the police, report to the police. But oftentimes in a lot of communities, you see people that are very reluctant, and maybe that reluctance comes from police brutality, or maybe that reluctance in itself comes from our lack of active citizenship. But if both parties play their part, I don't think this will be an issue.
Janola, I love the passion with which you're speaking about this, because it just speaks to the solid foundation you have in bringing communities and service providers
just
together in collaboration. It just comes through in everything that you speak about. I've really enjoyed unpacking the week's events with you again, and I look forward to doing it again next week. We skipped a week now, and we haven't quite launched yet. So hopefully this will be our launched episode. So for those who don't know, Janola and I have been sitting, trying to get used to doing these little quick weekly unpacks. We've been trying to get our production onto a level where we can launch this to you. This week might be the week, in which case we'll be delivering these, publishing them to various platforms on a more regular basis. So fingers crossed. Thanks, Janola.
All right, thank you, Anthony.
And that's a wrap. But the stories do not end here. Stay connected. Stay part of the conversation. We've got an amazing online community. Links down below. Subscribe so that we can all keep chatting about what matters. See you next time.